Welcome everybody. Welcome to our second epic fall event titled Making Dreams Work Through Teamwork. I'm Julie Tennille, Project Director, and I'm joined by Wendy Myers, Program Coordinator of EPIC. We're so excited about tonight and this evening's presenters. We have Christen, Bradbury, and Stephen Turley. Their presentation reviews design, collaboration, and implementation of a successful community reintegration program for pediatric burn survivors. This grew from a partnership between a hospital and a local fire department. Wow. Anyway, before we get started, a few notes that you need to be mindful of as our attendees. First, please work to remain muted. Our presenters will be able to answer your questions throughout their training tonight. They're open to folks entering into the chat, any questions that you might have, and I think they'll do their best to get to them. We also invite you to hold on to some of your deeper, more in-depth questions until the end of the presentation around 7:40, where we will kind of hide slides and be able to get into more of a conversation with the presenters. Second, when you log in, if you haven't already, you're logging in with your full name for attendance credit. If you need to change your name, click on the 3 dots in the upper right corner of your personal Zoom window, and you'll be able to do that pretty easily. And finally, and we want you to listen really closely to what I'm about to say, if you want CEUs or a certificate of attendance, you're required to attend the entire training and complete a certificate request form while the event is still live. So if you sort of take off and do something else in half an hour, you're not going to be able to get that stuff. Just want to remind you about that. And the link is available at the end of the post-test if you're making that request. We just want to make sure that you're staying on to complete the post-test. Also, a reminder that the goal of this research and training grant is to expand the numbers of well-trained MSW, MED school counseling, and PsyD professionals working with children, adolescents, and transitional-aged youth in high-need and high-demand areas. So I am going to turn it over to our presenters. Their bios are more detailed on our website, our EPIC website. And just a note that the video recording of tonight's event will be archived on our YouTube channel. Same with the resources, including a PDF of their slide deck. So welcome to Chris and Stephen. We're so thrilled that you're here. I'm going to stop sharing my slides and mute myself, hide my video, and let you share away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Julie. One moment while I share my screen. All right. And all right. Well, thank you so much for having us, and thank you everyone for coming. We hope to give you a great presentation today about this program that we're talking about. So my name is Chris Bradbury. I am a child life specialist and a recreational therapist. I used to work in Boston and ran a team there of child life specialists, recreational therapists, and music therapists. I now live overseas and do mostly consulting work, and that has to do with program creation, curriculum development, etc. But this program that we're going to talk to you today is one of my favorite programs that I've ever had anything to do with, and hopefully you'll see why by the end. And I'll let Steve introduce himself as well.
Okay, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Am I being heard? All right, sorry about that. Because I didn't see the screen up here. I'm not all that great with computers, but my name's Steve Turley. I'm a Boston firefighter. And started, which we'll talk about later, started this Burn Foundation. I've also worked in EMS just prior to and during my earlier years in firefighting. Been there for 26 years on the Boston Fire Department. And this, I'm also a paramedic, been in EMS for combined over 30 years since EMS and fire now. And this, without a doubt, I've had a great, very lucky in my career, been a part of a lot of great things. And this is without a doubt, the Burn Foundation and this Team Brave that we're going to talk about, without a doubt, the absolute best I've ever done. Very positive, and it's just a wicked awesome program. I mean, you're gonna find out about it, and we're gonna tell you about it. Really is. But go ahead, take it away, Coach. I keep saying Coach because we're talking about Team Brave, and every team needs a coach, and so you maybe hear me say Coach a lot, and I'm referring to Coach Chris. But,
awesome. All right. You can really tell he's from Boston, huh? All right. So everybody knows what a firefighter is. Everyone knows what an EMS is, but no one knows either of my professions. So I'm going to tell you about them. So as a child life specialist, we often work in hospital settings, but we work in many more, including schools, disaster relief, and others. But our job is to help reduce medical trauma through developmentally appropriate education and support. We support the patients and the family members, and we usually work very collaboratively with the team. It's the best way to make all of the benefits come to fruition. So we do that a lot through education surrounding their diagnosis, so they can understand in a way that's just not a lot of big words. We can illustrate things in different ways so they really understand and can ask questions that they're worried about. We might also prep them for procedures or going to the operating room, and we may even often accompany them during those procedures to help with some relaxation or distraction, other things that we do to kind of reduce that trauma in the medical setting. We also offer opportunities for emotional expression. We help with bereavement support for the whole family system, and sometimes we help with behavioral support as well. So many of the people who are here in this room today are people who we work very closely with: psych, social work, nursing. And so you may find some child life specialists on your path. As a recreational therapist, which is a completely different thing, we help rehabilitate patients physically, cognitively, psychosocially. We use recreation as our main tool, and we can be found in a lot of different settings. I usually work with pediatrics, but I did start with adults, stroke and TBI, so we can really work in a lot of different places. A lot of times you'll see us adapting recreation and sports so that people who have new injuries or new disabilities can still participate in ways that they did before. And then we tag on to a lot of the goals and objectives of other collaborators, like PT, OT, speech, and psych, to kind of help them work through the things that they need to work through. So giving them additional opportunities to work through those things in a different way. And we like to say, this is so cheesy, but we like to say we put the fun in functional, and we like to think that we're pretty fun people. So that is what I do. Steve thinks I'm fun too. So there you go. So now, what is community reintegration? What is this all about? So community reintegration is one of my favorite parts of my job. Recreational therapists do this all the time. It's a huge core part of what we do. And that's kind of reintroducing someone to the community once they have had usually a large life-changing event. So we're trying to reacclimate them into their community. We're considering what has changed in their lives, whether that's a physical change or an emotional change or a cognitive change. And we work with them hands-on in the community to try and figure out ways to support and navigate as they go through this. We encourage a lot of independence, adaptation, and we want to give them the opportunity to kind of work on these skills while they have a professional with them, because undoubtedly, when you've gone through something very big and you've been hospitalized for a long time, there's going to be nerves. There's going to be anxiety around going out. How am I going to take out my money now out of my wallet with, I don't have 3 of my fingers anymore. How am I going to navigate that? What if I'm too slow? What if people stare at me? So there's a lot of questions that go through our patients' heads, and we are there to support them through it. And our objective is always to find a way to make them feel successful while working on the relative goals or the relevant goals. We are treating them as a whole person, and we're trying to figure out how to make them successful when they no longer have our support or the support of the hospital. So our community reintegration program focused on the rehabilitation of burn survivors, who you'll see many photos of doing amazing things during this presentation. And this program particularly was in Boston. So I love to talk a little bit always about adverse childhood experiences, because while this is not the only great research out there about how impactful adverse experiences can be to a child, I think it does summarize it really nicely. So what is an ACE or an adverse childhood experience? It's a potentially traumatic event. Could be single time, it could be repeated time, it could be natural, it could be man-made, and these are experienced before the age of 18. And what they found is that this can impact brain development, their immune systems, the stress response system, which then dives into a whole thing with attention span, decision-making, learning capabilities, and it's just a domino effect from there on. So some of the long-term effects that they found from people who have had childhood experiences that were adverse is that later in life, they found that they had sometimes difficulty forming healthy relationships or stable relationships. They might have had some unhealthy parenting styles that they then passed down through generations. There might have been challenges with access to education or access to higher education, or might be reasons that they could not finish a GED. And that, of course, has its own domino effect. This can affect their socioeconomic status. This can affect in itself housing insecurity, work history, struggles with finances. Their mental health can suffer. This could lead to a host of different issues along the lifespan. And the different ways that people deal with these things could lead to teen pregnancy, drug use, other high-risk behaviors. And then, of course, with physical health, when your stress is high all the time, you can have chronic conditions that develop: heart disease, cancer, diabetes. And a lot of times the teen pregnancies that did happen would result in fetal death. So as a kind of to tie this all up, all of these adverse childhood experiences, this to me speaks volumes. Mental and physical health costs associated with ACEs amount to $748 billion annually between Bermuda, Canada, and the US. That blows my mind. And so what we want to try and do in my profession, in your professions, we want to prevent this pattern from developing wherever we can. And of course, the way that people respond to their trauma is going to be different. Some people will find this traumatic and some people won't, but we work with that, right? That's our job. So from our patient's perspective, very specifically, these are quotes from people who have studied this, or the second quote is actually from a burn survivor. She was not in a pediatric hospital. She was an adult when her burn happened, but I think that she says it well. So the first one, survivors say that everyday social interactions represent a real challenge. Going shopping, being in public places, and taking public transport meant being stared at and dealing with curiosity. And we know that not everyone's curiosity is going to be negative, but when you are sitting there and you're feeling all of that come to you, it can be really hard not to think that way. And that can lead into these spirals, and then eventually it could lead to people never leaving their home. And then Gina, who is a burn survivor, from her own perspective, this was an emotional adjustment for me that was extraordinarily difficult on occasion. Despite how far I had come, the psychological impact of starting my life over was overwhelming. Now what? What am I going to do? I was very self-conscious about my appearance. I would panic when I had to meet people for the first time. And so there are things that we feel like we can do to help prepare children and adults for these occasions. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be easy for them those first couple of times. And there are going to be times when they are met with malice. There are people out there who are just not nice. And so what we need to do is try and give them the tools that they need to succeed in these moments, or ways to escape if they need to. So in our hospital specifically, we used to have a program that was able to cater more one-to-one. And we were able to even start this process while the kids were inpatient. So while they're inpatient, we might, as they're kind of transitioning from the acute phase, which is when they're having all of their surgeries, they're really focused on healing, they're very tired, there's a lot of pain. We're not going to kind of introduce all of this then, but as they start to get to the rehabilitation phase where they're going to start working on more of their ambulation, they're going to work on their range of motion, they're going to work on trying to get back to their physical skills as much as they can. That's when we start giving them this training for community reintegration. And this is something that we want them to look forward to, but at the same time, recognize that it's not always something that they're going to look forward to. So in our hospital initially, we had the preliminary phase. So it was a very small activity or outing to prepare for future community outings. And this could literally mean it's their first time off the unit and we're going up to the cafeteria. So this might just be their first time where they're not around medical staff and other burn survivors. This might be the first time where they have been surrounded by people who don't know their story, who might have not seen, had a lot of interactions with other burn survivors. And so that can in itself kind of be a big deal. So usually this was inside the hospital and it would be short and we would go back and we would debrief. And then we had the transitional phase. So once we had one or two of the smaller preliminary outings, we would do a transitional phase. So this is kind of in between. It's a little bit longer of a distance. We're really testing those physical skills. It includes a longer time or a longer exposure to people who maybe have never seen a burn survivor before. And they aren't always from a medical setting. We had a really cool tunnel that actually connected our hospital to a different hospital, and our hospital was burns only. And so usually for our transitional phase, we would kind of take them through the tunnel and then we would go up into this other hospital and like go to the gift shop and buy something, or go get a little sweet treat from the coffee shop. So there is a reward implied, but still that whole journey there and back was going to be a lot. And so that was still around medical people, but not necessarily people who had seen a survivor before. So that was hard too. And then eventually we would get to the progressive phase, which is where we're really going for long distances. We might be walking around the aquarium for hours at this point. Bigger crowds, definitely people who have never seen a burn survivor before, might include public transportation. And this was definitely the most difficult to implement. So this is kind of how we did things for a very long time. And then there were some changes in the hospital. So we had a lot of big changes very quickly in the hospital system. And one of the things that made things difficult for this kind of programming was kind of involved in that. So we were no longer able to take inpatients outside of the hospital. So then we would have to wait for the outpatient phase, which if you're outpatient, you aren't necessarily super close to the hospital. So making logistics of that work before the child had to go back to school or back into the community was kind of, how do we navigate this? We had to completely reimagine the program. And so, we started a little bit later in terms of the preparation and things like that. And we would really try and plan an outing, but then it would only be maybe one outing, one-to-one. And we didn't really feel like that was enough because it didn't give them, we didn't feel the support that they needed to really navigate all of these different things. It was helpful, but we thought more would be better. So what we needed to do was really figure this out. If we wanted to impact as many kids as we could, we needed to figure out an entirely new system, scrap the old, and bring in something completely new. So we would still prepare while they were inpatients, but we could only take them out when they were outpatients. So we got to imagining. And so I came up with the idea, let's try to put something together where we could take small groups. Then we have peer support, we have peer interactions, we have a little bit of a safety net in terms of who we're working with and who we're with. We would have at least, now I was running the program, so it was going to be me or maybe one of the other child life specialists or the psychologist. We might go a couple of us together, depending on what the needs of each of the patients was. So small groups, 3 to 15 outpatients, maybe 2 times a month, lots of different activities, everything from bowling to rock climbing to ice skating to cooking. We wanted to do all the fun things to try and really motivate the patients to want to do this very scary thing. We would tailor it to each patient's physical and psychosocial goals. We would adapt the recreation as needed. We would do some leisure education. Many of our kids came from Central and South America and didn't have the same access to recreation that we did here. So it was kind of motivating in itself that they would kind of be able to do something new. We would talk about psychosocial goals, their physical goals, their social skills, peer support, and preparation support. So this is already, I like to dream big. I don't know what to tell you. So I'm already thinking of all these things. And then what do we do to make this even more impactful? We do a lot of collaboration. We need to know, we want referrals. We want anyone in the medical professions to say, hey, I think this kiddo would really benefit from XYZ. We needed to get approvals based on, physical needs or psychosocial needs. We needed to set their goals with them. The coordination of the care, the social workers and the care coordinators were always a huge part of that. Oftentimes they were kind of bringing kids who, lived an hour away on the train, making sure that they got in, making sure they had funding for the train. And it was such a great process of collaboration to a point where even some of the doctors started prescribing the program for some of the kids. We also had interpreters. Like I said, many of our patients were from Central and South America. So we had 2 staff Spanish interpreters, and they would come and help us where needed. And then we also wanted to do some research eventually, but that was down the line and we weren't ready for that just yet. First, we had to figure out how to make this happen. So as always, there are barriers. And so what were our biggest ones? Now, I had a small budget. I probably could cover the cost of some of these things, but it was not a comfortable budget. And so we thought, wow, it would be really great if we could find some more money for this. Because also we're going to need to transport the patients, not only to the hospitals to access the program, but also to wherever we were going that day. We would need to make sure of staffing. I was managing the team and also had a 3/4 caseload. When was I going to have time to actually do this or plan this? We had patient care logistics. We needed to get the clearance from the MD or the NP. We wanted to go to rehab to make sure we weren't kind of doing anything that was counterindicated for any of their rehab goals. We wanted to make sure they were available. Sometimes there were surprise surgeries or something would happen. They would have to go to clinic or something. So we kind of had to work around that. And if they were an outpatient and already back at school, that was another thing that we wanted to work around. So we wanted to make this accessible as much as possible. Of course, we had illness. We had a chickenpox epidemic one year, so that slowed things down. Unplanned surgeries, other appointments. And I have to say the other specialists and therapists were amazing at trying to fit things around this program because I feel like they really saw the benefit for their patients as well. Medications, I certainly can't administer any medications. So would their schedule of medications fit in with the timing of our outing? Any surgical counterindications? If we're going to a trampoline park, we certainly aren't going to take anyone who just had a surgery and has stitches or any other things like that, a new graft. Timeliness of interprofessional communication. There's a lot going on in hospitals, and we don't always have a lot of control over when we can get to our emails and how quick it is to kind of figure out all of these things that we need to think about. Flexibility, who has it? We'll try. Language barriers. We had a lot of language barriers, and that was not a problem on the outings themselves, but we did need to get consent from the parents or caregivers for every outing. And so again, our interpreters were kind of very necessary for this. And then of course the family schedule in school. How can we make all this work? And when it came to parent permissions, yep, we had the language barriers. We solved that with our amazing interpreters. A huge thing was actually parent buy-in, because the parents did not come with us. And kind of anecdotally, over my years there, I kind of found that sometimes, especially for the younger kids who are just like ready to rock and roll, the parents would be the ones who had the bigger problems, the bigger concerns, which makes all the sense in the world. But at the same time, without this opportunity for them to show what they could do, their parents might never see what they could do. And it was pretty amazing to see after all of these outings and things like that. And the kids would come back and they would say, oh, I skated with the firefighters, or I did this, I did this. And the parents would just kind of looks of shock on their face because they didn't think they could. And so that was another thing that kind of just like trying to convince the parents, we'll take good care of them. We've got the firefighters. We know all their physical limitations. And then it usually worked out really, really well. Ability to get in contact prior to the outing seems simple, but not everyone had a cell phone. Not everyone had a lot of ability to communicate. So how do we get through that barrier? And then, of course, parent pickup and coordination. There were a few times when some caregivers maybe didn't show up for maybe like an hour after we got back, which of course kind of made it a little harder for me to continue with the work that I needed to do and other things like that. So, and of course, therapist coverage. So lots of barriers. And I'm thinking, gosh, is there a way? Is there? Well, then Steve came along and I'll let him tell you guys all about that.
I don't think they're barriers. They're just, I don't like the term barrier anyways, but I understand the context of this. But I think it's just steps. That's the way I look at it, steps forward that we have to take. So, all right. Again, my name's Steve Turley. I think everyone can see me. I'm not that small, so I guess you could see me. It's just that I'm not seeing myself on the screen, which is probably a good thing. So I'm the co-founder and director of the Boston Firefighters Burn Foundation. Our Burn Foundation, some of this is on the slide. I'm so used to saying it myself. So our Burn Foundation mission is to ease the suffering and hardship of burn victims, survivors, and their families. We've been working with Shriners now for 20 years, and then of course Team Brave. We're able to team up with Team Brave and do that since its inception. But a little thing about our Burn Foundation, our board members, and it came up earlier, we're all non-paid, but actually to be on our board, you have to pay. So every one of us has to pay money to be on our board. That separates us from, every nonprofit that I know of anyways. And we are without a doubt the absolute best for foundation, Burn Foundation. That's the attitude we took when we decided to start it, is we have to be not better, not try our best, not do that. We just have to be the best. And that's our mark. That's what we always are obtaining, to be the best. Anyways, some of the things we do, our mission statement may seem simple, but it's we do a lot. We do lodging, we do hospitality, housing. Actually, this week we are doing 3 lodgings for different patient families. I think it's 3, and that means put up the family at the closest hotel we can get them to the hospital, and there's several. So that's what we do, and then clothing. Usually, especially in the acute phase, when this patient, let's take Shriners, because we also do adult patients, burn victims, and survivors too. But let's take, in the case of Shriners, that acute phase, they come here sometimes flown in from wherever, far, sometimes far away, and they don't have much. Maybe the family was victims of a structure fire, a house fire, and they don't have clothing or really much, and all they care about now is their loved one. In this case, the child, and we'll get them clothing. We'll make sure they get whatever essentially they need so they can concentrate with all the hospitals or whatever is being done in the hospital. So we do that a lot with the adult victims and survivors too. And of course, gifts during the holidays, and especially at the start, it sounds corny, but is companionship. And I've gotten, I know burn survivors now for a while, and some of them are real good friends now. We have, in their families, their family members, and we do stay in touch. But I'm not the only one. A bunch of us on the board are like that, and the other firefighter volunteers that we have. That's all I got on that slide, but we're good. So how did we get started? Our Burn Foundation got started just simply to help the burn victim. Actually, when the Burn Foundation got started, we went through a rash of grabs that we were getting, rescue out of structure fires. So, and there was probably, within a month or 2 months, we were involved in this. And I remember one who didn't, make it, but one was a pediatric patient that we grabbed and ended up to this place called Shriners. But actually, the reason we started is because firefighters usually rescue, meaning extract the burned victim. At this time, they're victims, right? Or the patient, and get them. We got EMS there, and we put them in the back of the hospital. The ambulance just drove off and went to Mass General or Brigham or whatever hospital it needed to take care of the burns. And then sometimes they'd end up at Shriners, of course, the pediatric cases. But as firefighters, we never knew what happened. Are they doing okay? Are they all right? And so after literally back at the firehouse, we were like, all right, we had that one up on this street, the other one 2 weeks ago on this. Now, last night we had, this victim. And we wanted to find out. We really wanted to find out. And we said, hey, you know what? We heard my partner at the time said, hey, we got, this other city has a burn foundation, this other fire department. And they can find out they're involved in the burn units at this municipality. So right then and there, we said, all right, let's do it, and started the Burn Foundation. And it was that simple. It was, I didn't know what 501c3 meant. I had no idea what the steps or anything, but we just started it. We went to the other firefighters and said, hey, this is what we're doing. We're going to help them further along. And I think that's the whole, one of the good things about it is we can see this now full circle almost. We can see the burn victims, and then later we see them as burn survivors now, and we can continue to help their family and everything. Up until Team Brave, we really weren't involved in what we refer to as treatment, obviously, because of, let's say, go to Shriners Hospital, they were getting that treatment, but we at least knew and could understand that, hey, they look pretty severe, their injuries, but they end up turning to be okay. And then, of course, later Team Brave came along with pediatrics, and we formed that, and we could find that they are doing pretty darn good. So, into the with our involvement directly with Shriners and I do remember the exact patient. I won't say the patient's name, but we had two patients simultaneous. One was being at another burn unit, because one was an adult, and one was being at Shriners. I know their name. I still keep in touch with them. And then we literally just walked into Shriners Hospital. Me and this other guy I started with, we just said, hey, we just started this burn foundation, and we want to help you guys. And of course, Shriners Hospital being, who are these guys? Oh, they're firefighters. I don't know. We met with the PI, Public Information Office. Nobody else. And they said, oh, okay, thanks. No, we really want to, oh, here, we got this money for this victim. Do you need anything else for her? And that's how we got started, especially with the Shriners. And we just did it. We didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know we had to register with the state at that time. We didn't know we had to do all this other stuff. Oh, get an IRS number, which was on your EIN number. Is it EIN? EIN, sorry. I almost said it backwards. I used to be dyslexic, but I'm KO now. So the EIN number. If I say that fast, I'll screw it up. But didn't know what any of this was. And we just kept moving forward and finding out the stuff as it goes. As far as, and since we started our burn foundation, a lot of people come to me about the volunteers. And the only thing I want to talk about the volunteers is we don't have, because so many organizations have trouble getting people to volunteer. For some reason, with firefighters, we don't really have a problem, especially with Team Brave, getting our volunteers. We got too many. I told you about the Burn Foundation. Everyone has to pay to be on the board. 2 years ago, we started an auxiliary board that you have to be a member, non-voting member on the board for a year and be evaluated, but still have to pay. So they did that. We have 8 other people requesting to do it. We can't handle 8 others right now, so we had to bump it from 2 to 3, and then we'll slowly progress that way. So for some reason, I don't know, I don't have a handle on that one, but we don't have a problem with them wanting to volunteer to either be on our board or, in this case, to be volunteer with Team Brave, which we'll get into. And how did we get into Team Brave? It was so awesome. Coach Chris, who by then was only Chris because we didn't start Team Brave yet, we met with already knew for a long time, and already were said it came up. Let's meet. Want to run this past you, and right there at the meeting, I believe it was. I don't have the date with me. It was January 14, I think. I'm almost positive it was January 14 that we had this meeting, but I could be wrong. And that was the initial meeting. And at that meeting, it said, "What? There's a problem here. Well, giddy up. Let's do it. Let's do this. Some community reintegration where we involve us, the Burn Foundation." And we just did it. We both loved the goal. She was in, maybe it was an easy sell for her. I don't know. But we just said, absolutely. And the biggest thing with the Team Brave is I always like to refer to it as, how did we get started? All these things that were initially, we heard earlier about called barriers. Well, we didn't know. I don't like the barrier. I just like saying steps that we have to take. But we took what I refer to as, and I don't think I came up with this term, but I might have, but it's called the Lewis and Clark approach. We just knew the direction we wanted to go, and we didn't want to think about anything else, liabilities or anything like that, or insurance or anything. We said, no, this has to be done, so let's do it, and let's just move in this direction. And actually, Coach can correct me, I believe the first technically Team Brave, which wasn't called Team Brave at the time, the first community reintegration was right down the street at the park doing the wiffle ball, if I remember correctly. And that was, anyways, that was 2014, I think. But later in that year, I forget, in the spring. I do have it written down. It is on my calendar. I should know it. But it's been great, and when I say that Lewis and Clark approach, because that's what I hope none of you guys are history majors, because you're going to come back and do all this. But Lewis and Clark, the explorers, to go westward. That's it. They had to go west, and they didn't have a Dick's Sporting Goods. They didn't have all these fancy equipment. Maybe they didn't have a compass, but they knew the direction. And every time they came to what some may refer to as an obstacle, what did they do? They figured it out, and they learned on the way. They kept moving. Sorry, I keep moving I'm not Italian, by the way, so don't me move my hands. But that's what they did, and that's what I think with every organization. I do other stuff on the side too, and run a business, and I have to also get other teams and everybody involved in other groups, and I like to refer to it as that way, the Lewis and Clark approach. The other thing we do now, if I can go just the name of the program. So all the stuff you see on the slide here is the what do? We fund it, yeah, and we're happy to do so. We provide the transportation, we provide the volunteers, and of course we need to be in uniform. We are a team, so we provide t-shirts, and everyone's t-shirt is Team Brave, and it's our logo on it, our shared logo on it. And that's what so that was, we had to come up with a problem, solve a problem somewhere. And I think that's the biggest thing, getting group together, working together. So there's the teamwork and getting, solving problems to some people may be an obstacle. It really isn't. It's just a step. And step one, after everyone, in my opinion, after everyone identifying the problem, we have to know this is the problem and not just a symptom of it. This is how we came up with Team Brave, is that we understand, everybody understands that's the problem. And then we just, it takes steps and it takes times. And those steps I've always referred to as saturate, incubate, and illuminate. So what the heck is that? I don't think I made that up because let's face it, you guys already figured out I'm not that bright, but the saturate is just getting all this data in, right? Saturate with all this data, and then just let it stew, let it incubate, let you constantly think. And this is how problems are solved all the time, and a lot of us don't realize it. So that's it, saturate. That's the saturate part. The incubate is just let it simmer there. Let it simmer until collectively we have that eureka moment, that illuminate. You know, when the light bulb goes off, sometimes it's at, 3 in the morning. And actually, in the case of Team Brave, that's pretty much kind of how it happened. We just all of a sudden, giddy up. We'll call it Team Brave. Because it's all about teamwork, working together. And then the one thing that we always hear as firefighters was that whole, Boston's brave, or firefighters are brave, or there's some bravery to it. No. These pediatric patients, these burn survivors, are far braver than us, and every firefighter is so humbled to be in their presence and the presence of all the medical professionals that treat them every day. And we're like, we're not the brave. These people, the healthcare providers that treat them all the time, and the survivors themselves. And that's about it. Now, I think I covered everything. I probably went off on a little tangent. I apologize. Chris, Coach, is this over to you?
I thought you were jumping ahead to engage, encourage, so I put it up here.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you want me to do that?
Yeah, well, first I'll let them know. So when we got together in this meeting and we were thinking about, how do we get this off the ground? We got it off the ground. As you can see, Steve and his crew completely like bulldozed half or more of the barriers, or steps as he calls them. And it really made this completely possible. And so we decided that the mission would be to provide patients the opportunity to work on psychosocial and physical goals in the community with clinical, peer, and firefighter support. The key principles were that it was going to be recreation based so that we could adapt and we could, help them gain mastery of a skill where that they might not have thought that they could achieve. Because most people don't when they come out of a long hospital stay. We wanted to make sure that it was very therapeutic, that it was very intentional, that was completely based off of each of these kids as their own person, and to really kind of give back and focus around their objectives as a whole in their healing. And then it incorporates skills previously learned about coping in the community. So all of that training and that focus that we did on the social skills. So we wanted every outing to have at least these principles involved. And then when Steve was talking about the saturate and things like that, that's how they came up. And they came up with not only Team Brave, but they came up with these words for the vision. And yeah, that's on you, Steve. Go for it.
No, it actually isn't. It's so everything about teamwork. We've got a great coach, that was just another step we had to take. Another, we had to identify an issue on these steps, and we needed a simple, not keyword. Now I forget what.
Like a motto,
slogan, motto. Yeah. And that was the steps we thought we're going to have to do. We have to engage, firefighters have to engage the burn survivors, and we have to encourage them. Well, they're pretty easy, to think about. You have to engage them to encourage them anyways, and create some sort of bond. Believe it or not, speaking of that bond, I'll have, there's literally burns when they come back for maybe a checkup or something, they always want to meet up with, I remember Bill, that fight, he was on there, and they've interacted outside of the hospital in the past, unbeknownst to me, but everyone would come up, hey, I saw, whoever. I was with him on 2 or 3 Team Braves. He remembered me. He came right up to me because I was in the area, they were maybe at a car wreck or something, or outside the firehouse, and the survivor was driving by with their parents on the way to Shriners, and they said, whoa, we're going to pull over, that's Bill, and then I find there's stories like that all the time. I see it all the time when I'm at Shriners and I see somebody else coming in for a visit or got a scheduled surgery. So that was great. So the engagement is working out great, and through it all is the encouragement. Engage first, working out great, encourage, and just really being right there with them, him or her, whoever the burn survivor is, and just encourage. And it's just really being, I guess probably a lot of it has to do with maybe firefighters themselves are just kids anyways, just never grew up, and just like to do these activities anyways. Well, at least I never grew up. My wife will tell you that. But and then so we're just encouraging all the time. And then afterwards the empower came up, and what are we doing with this? And we're really making them stronger, making them more self-confident, than the empower. So engage, encourage, and empower. And that's it was just such a process. That's what we do. And we had to reevaluate all the time. Of course, Shriners is reevaluating what they're doing and how the patients are doing, the survivors are doing. Believe it or not, since the onset, I and somebody else has always been involved in how the firefighters are doing and how we're doing. This is how we getting feedback from the firefighters. This is how we were doing it, and just saying, hey, how'd you like it? It was just simple that. And then we came up with engage, encourage, and empower. And that's how it started.
And it really was, it was the perfect combination of words. It's exactly what we were trying to do. And I do think one of the really cool things about having the firefighters on board and have the consistency, first of all, of having repeat volunteers come back again and again, like Steve said. And then also just the fact that there was no elephant in the room, right? Like, these guys have always come to the hospital. They do Christmas in July. They bring gifts. They do ice cream socials. They do all sorts of things. They already know the kids. There's no one in that team who sees a child who has had a major burn injury and goes, never. And that was always one of the harder things when we had volunteers coming from the outside, is that regardless of how much we trained them, there was usually a lot of times some sort of hesitancy or just a sadness, and the kids felt that, and they didn't want to be felt sorry for. And so when the firefighters came and did this with them, not like the elephant was not in the room, they didn't have to feel weird about it. In fact, it was the complete opposite, where it's like, I have firefighters, they're my friends, like, you can't do anything to bother me today because, they're going to have my back. And I feel like that was the feeling that a lot of the kids had. So it was really cool and very unique that that this kind of came together, and it just worked out beautifully. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about kind of the whole process of designing this and how we made it as intentional as we made it. It would be one thing to just go out, hey, group, come on, let's go out. Let's go to the aquarium, and not take advantage of all of these learning and skill opportunities that they would have, and also prepare ourselves for if there was an issue, in terms of mostly psychosocial, but sometimes, physical, logistical, lots of things. So for every outing that we do, which you see some of them listed at the bottom here, not all of them, there would not be enough room. We've been everywhere. It was really really complete, lots of experiences. But for every single one of these, I would do an activity or task analysis. And this is a very common thing that recreational therapists do when they're designing and implementing any kind of strategy for their patients. We need to know, what are the physical criteria? What are the adaptations that are possible or are needed for these patients? What are the safety requirements? Any other equipment or anything that we need? If there's disqualifying criteria, for example, this is ice skating. And if you have a tissue expander, which is basically it's a balloon that goes under your skin, and they inflate it over time so that they can then use that skin to kind of pull it over and instead of a graft. And so obviously you can't risk going ice skating if you have a tissue expander or staples or any kind of wires in your fingers. So disqualifying criteria, what would the staffing need to be like? So for any activity that was more physical in nature, so ice skating, rock climbing, horseback riding, things where you could really get hurt if you didn't do it well or right, that would require a CTRS. So a recreational therapist would need to go to make sure of all of the safety precautions. And then if it were something that was more about walking, or you sat like the paint bar, or even Dave and Buster's, or sometimes even bowling, depending, it wouldn't require necessarily a recreational therapist to go. So we needed to know about the staffing as well. And then what are all of the possible goals that we could be working on with kids? So what are all the physical goals? What are all the psychosocial goals we could be working on? And then what supplies do we need to bring? So this made it easy, not only like if I weren't there and somebody else was running that particular outing, they would look at this and have everything given to them. It made it much easier to implement this as a group if we needed to. Usually I ended up going on most of them. But then there were other times where other staff came as well. So our collaboration and planning stage behind the scenes on our end, on the hospital side of things. So planned and implemented by recreational therapists. This is just what we did most of the time, because this meant that we could benefit from the physical and psychosocial goals at the same time. Because a recreational therapist has both of those expertises. We would obviously need our medical approval. We needed to know from PT and OT what were the restrictions, what were they working on, and we wanted to get input from all the team members. So we would ask the other child life specialists, hey, you've been working with this kiddo, what do you think about their first outing? What do you anticipate their needs will be? Do you feel like they need a one-to-one for psychosocial support, or do you feel like they could be in a group of 2 to 3? We would talk with the psychologists, we would talk with the care managers, most of whom were social workers, and they would really help kind of put this all into place. And I can't tell you, this is probably the biggest hospital collaboration I've ever been a part of. The fact that so many different departments were very invested in getting kids on these outings. And oftentimes kind of like, well, why can't this patient go? Why can't this patient go? And most of the time it was because of, regulations or restrictions and other things like the activity that we were doing or their availability. And yeah. So there was a lot to think about. We wanted to think about the cross-contamination risks evaluated by our infection control nurse. She needed to make sure that everyone was cleared from an infection control standpoint. We later introduced a teen discussion group with support of psychology. So every time before we would go, and this teen group was open to all teens, but all Team Brave participants who are over 13 had to go. And we would work on social skills and talk about what their worries were and peer support and things like that. So, and then we didn't have to worry about the funding or volunteer recruitment. Or transportation. We knew that was going to be taken care of, very reliable. And then if we needed some extra support care. So sometimes we had kiddos who had a complicated dressing, and if that had come off for some reason, we needed nursing support. So sometimes we'd be able to coordinate with nursing to bring them as well, just in case. And it was always a pleasure to have them too, because they got to see kind of the fruits of their labor. kind of seeing the kids out and about and doing all of these things because of the much of the work that they had done. So we had these very tailored objectives, and I'm kind of going to go through some examples here. We had some safety ones. So obviously a new prosthesis, we got to use a walker today. Do they need assistance? How much assistance? Can they weight bear on both legs? Sometimes there were compliance issues with pressure garments. Pressure garments help flatten scars as they are healing. And they're very tight and they can be itchy. And well, healing skin is very itchy anyway. So it can be very tight, it can be uncomfortable, it can be very, very hot, especially in the summertime, and people who have large burn injuries because their skin is not working as it normally would, they have a harder time regulating their body temperature. So a lot of things like that could happen. So on the trip, they would have to wear their pressure, and we would kind of navigate through that. And then in terms of goals that we would have, so we would have a form that we would fill out every week or every time we went. And with each firefighter who was assigned a patient, I would go through with them and I would say, okay, they're working on knee flexion and grasp on their right hand. If you do this activity with them, can you try and see if they can do it the most of the time with their right hand? Or increasing balance. See if you can, do kind of like some more activities that, like if we were at Dave and Buster's, for example, can you do an activity that has more, that will challenge their balance more, where they're not sitting all the time? See what you can push in terms of, and don't push too far, but see what you can push in terms of like making sure they stay on their feet as much as possible, doing gross motor activities. So we would give instructions like that to the firefighters, and they would go and they would do all of these things, and I would kind of circle around and kind of check in on everyone as we went. So we would have all of these things and so many more things. I think there was a list of at least 20 different things that they could each be working on depending on where they were. So initially our very first try, we were like, okay, let's make it 3 to 25. And I know that's a funny age. Our hospital did not require insurance at the time. And so we often took a lot of our patients from out of state or out of country were non-insurance patients. And so their treatment was covered. And so we often had patients who would come back again and again, all the way up through 25. It's not very common to get someone who is that old, but sometimes. It could be any size burn injury. It didn't matter if it was visible or not. It didn't matter where it was, as long as they got clearance from the team, as long as it was age appropriate for them. We would make it a priority for new patients who had not participated in the program before, just because we wanted to create accessibility for everyone who needed it. And we felt like everyone pretty much needed it. There were very few patients I've ever had who I felt like, oh yeah, they're going to be fine. Go do your thing. So we just felt like it would be beneficial for everyone in some way or another. There was also a priority for patients who had multiple relevant goals. So if they were working on a ton of different things, they might also get a priority. And then patients who were identified as struggling. So the team would get to be able to, give us input on that. And then we would also look at other things eventually, like punctuality and did they actually come when they said they were going to come? Sometimes there are logistical nightmares on their end too that make it impossible for them to make it. So we are understanding of those things, but we did want to make sure that everyone could participate. And so, if you don't show up for 3 times, then you might not be the priority for the next round, because we want everyone else to be able to have a turn as well. And we need to make sure that they're following instructions during the outing. Ultimately, we have to be aware of their safety. And if they were unable to follow safety instructions, then it wouldn't be safe for them to continue to participate. And so we would work on that with psych to try and figure out what we need to do to make this easier for them to kind of adhere to. So getting buy-in from hospital staff, you would not think that would be hard. This looks fun, right? But ultimately, if you really think about it, staff in pretty much every hospital are burnt out. They already have a lot of things on their plate, and adding to the mental load of what they had to think about that day or coordinate with staff and things like that, it's not actually something that people really want to do. Just, so what we started with was myself and the BFFBF would co-present at symposiums, just local, like in the hospital. We would talk about what we wanted to do. We would talk about what I've just been telling you. We would go to management meetings, or I would go to management meetings and present and just ask the managers, what are your concerns? How can we work through this? And then we had town hall presentations and updates. So kind of sharing pictures when we did go, really trying to kind of give that energy to the people around us so that people would really want to do it. And eventually they really loved it and they wanted to be a part of it. I think the team approach to referrals also really helped. It's so important to understand the patient as a whole when you're trying to do something like this, or really anything when you're treating your patient, because it just helps you make sure you're on the right track. And then also we would have trainings and briefings for volunteers, although the BFFBF kind of took over for that for us too. So they really made it really much easier for us. And now some BFFBF logistics.
So so just some logistics. We didn't find it anything as a problem, but remember, we always doing team. Everyone's seen that. What's up on your slide? Together, everyone achieves more, and that's the biggest thing. Is understanding the team and the importance of it. The next from there is just some of the funds. The recruitment wasn't actually that bad for us. The initial, once we got a few, and then they kept talking about it. So it might be that whole, it's kind of maybe a competitive spirit, maybe the firefighters have, first of all, like my company, I on a company rescue too. Well, first of all, we are the best out there. We're the better ones. Even though, Danny from Ladder 29 or Pat from Ladder 29 on our Burn Foundation, he'll say, no, we're the best company. So that's kind of how it is with the getting people and then keeping them, bringing them back for volunteers, because they'll just go back to their companies like, oh man, did you hear Ladder 10? They had a good one. Man, guys, yeah, everyone, Engine 52 stepping up. We're gonna do better than them. And so that was really it. It's like, and then of course, if I go into another company who hasn't participated yet, I say, well, you're the only guys in the district that really hasn't stepped. I mean, everyone else is talking bad about you, but whatever, if you guys don't, and then boom, I get it. I get all five, they'll do it. So it wasn't that bad. It was just the logistics. And then the only thing for everything on that, the logistics was we had our own grading system. For anyone new volunteer, we always kept an eye, they had to know, engage, encourage, and empower. That's it. And we just kind of made sure. To date, I've never had to, which I am certainly will do, but I've never had to tell anyone, beat it, you can't come back again. And that's it. I mean, and that's just, I guess my whole thing is, what sums it up is how do you do team? You need a leader. Well, we had a great coach to start us off, and everyone's got to understand what leadership is. And I've always thought, leadership is, it's a process of influencing others to accomplish a task by providing a purpose, a direction, and motivation. I'm just looking at the whole team. I just came up with that. I didn't come up with that now, the leadership aspect. And I think everyone, and we had a great coach. We now currently have a great coach too, as we're still doing this. And go ahead, Coach, today,
Okay,
I'm
good.
going over. I think I'm delaying this whole thing. We need to move along, huh?
You're doing good. You're good.
Okay.
So, obviously, with any program, you have to evaluate it consistently to make sure that you're improving consistently and that you're delivering valuable content to your patients. So we were just initially collecting very basic data. We wanted to know. So here we have our first outing. So this is the first year. We had 83 total individual unique participants. Some of these people went twice or more, so 189 total encounters. 26 sessions were planned, 1 cancellation for the chicken box. The lowest number of participants was 3. That was our very first one, and the highest number was 12. So, and then we decided, okay, well, we need to beef this up a little bit. Let's do some let's do some research. So we just started with a very basic, again, quality improvement survey for patients. It's just very general feedback from all of our collaborators. So kind of back from the firefighters, hey, is this working for you? And then also with our staff, is this working for you? And then we started designing more long-term investigative research. So as a result, more about the survey. So this is the first one. This was about their perceived benefits, what they thought they got from this situation or these outings. They were anonymous questionnaires. They focused mostly on psychosocial aspects. So there were true and false questions, free text, and then multiple response options. And then they were administered by a research assistant to reduce bias. I had nothing to do with it. And then we had interpreter services for Spanish-speaking patients. So we had a small sample to begin with, but you know what? That's fine. We got to start somewhere. And then the overall responses were good. People wanted to be participating in this. They felt like it helped them. And so we'll get a little bit into the results here. So they're true false questions, a lot of positive feelings that they reported feeling. Some of them sometimes felt like it didn't really help them be more comfortable around strangers. And then some of them felt like they did not achieve any of their goals. And we didn't do enough at the time to understand that person in particular, because they were anonymous. Was this someone's first outing? Because you would very much understand feedback like that, but we really didn't know. So, and we don't expect everything to be perfect, so it's, you know, not a big deal to us that people were saying false. So now we're thinking, well, how do we do better to help them achieve their goals? How do we get more information from them at the beginning to understand what they want out of this, so that we can kind of marry the two things together. So in their multiple response sections, so these are out of all the 12, so 10 out of 12 felt happy, 7 out of 12 felt excited, some felt proud, joyful. There were a couple overwhelmed kids, which makes a lot of sense, and a few felt confident. So this is good to know, is that most of these are positive. We still have some that are challenging, so how do we address that? And then for their free response sections, their favorite thing, what do they like? Learning new things, places to go, nos inspiran a seguir sin importa qué. They inspire us to continue regardless, conocer gente nueva y compartir con ellos, meet new people and share with them, compartir con mis amigos and share with my friends. So we have that peer component right there, where they're feeling that connection with their peers, which was great. And then a few more. What do you like working with the firefighters? They make me happy. They're fun and helpful. They're friendly. They care about us. I feel safe. That's a huge one. They're nice to everyone. They make, to give this time to us. They're super funny. They help take care of us. So they're feeling comfortable around the firefighters, which is a huge thing. So it kind of increases their safety bubble, right? So when we're out in an aquarium, with a bunch of kids, and you know other kids are going to be curious. You know that they're going to wonder what happened to them, and they're going to wonder it out loud in a loud voice. And some kids might not be very well prepared for that to actually happen, even if we prepared them quite a bit. So having the firefighters there almost seemed to boost them, to boost their confidence, make them feel like a little like they could deflect it a little bit easier. So as a result of this and our questions to our collaborators and everything, we changed the age range from 5 to 22. One of the things was with the 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, we were finding that there was some separation anxiety, there were some toilet training issues, and also parent issues. These were the parents who were having a harder time, and kind of causing that stress we didn't think was a very good idea. And kind of the stranger anxiety and toilet training, those were taking away from the experience, and they were causing stress to the child. So we did not want that. And to be honest, like I said before, especially for the younger kids, it's usually the parent that we're doing the community reintegration for. Usually the 3 and 4-year-olds are just running around and like trying everything. They're so resilient and they just keep going. It's usually the parents who are worried. So we kind of decided to make it a little bit older. And then if there were younger kids who were appropriate, who did not have the stranger anxiety, who were toilet trained, and we could make that decision then. And also over 22 case by case, because there weren't very many. So, and also we needed to make sure it was age appropriate. So we changed it to bi-weekly outings on Thursdays. Some of this was just mostly logistical, activity scheduling, volunteer scheduling, Friday afternoon traffic. It's real. So we didn't want that. Awareness, we put a Team Brave poster in the clinic waiting room. We wanted more people to inquire about it. We got publicity and news coverage. We were talking about it. We had our official program t-shirts, started making agreements with vendors. This started getting bigger. And then of course the teen group. So we expanded that to, especially for the teens, we asked them to create SMART goals. So specific, measurable, achievable, reasonable, and in a specific time frame. We had them create SMART goals before their outings so that we could know what they wanted to work on, and then also have them work on what we thought was best for them therapeutically as well. And then we created a team captain role. And that was designed to kind of encourage leadership. This person was going to go kind of welcome the younger kids, get them situated, help them like follow the rules. And might help out with the firefighters. So kind of being given some control, being given a job, being given worth, and having them do something that's important. And so this was run by myself, or a child life specialist, another child life specialist, and a psychologist. And then there's more research that happened that was much bigger. It just hasn't been published yet. And then there's also firefighter perspectives that haven't been published yet. So that was a lot of change, but needed, and it will continue to change over time, as we learn more and more about what the population wants, and it's our duty to kind of continue to see what's going on. So how can this translate? So this program has already been adopted by a sister hospital in California. So they do the same thing with a firefighter foundation there. They use the same model, so it's already kind of been generalized. Of course, we were incredibly lucky to have the support of the BFFBF, and I don't know if it would have been possible without them. If it were, it would have been a lot slower and a lot less kids would have benefited from it. So, you know, if you can find a partnership like that, then you kind of adjust it to your needs of your population. It can work for adults too. Adults need it as well. It's not just going back to work that's important for them. It's going back to the community. It's going back to their recreational activities. And it's important for anyone. It's not even just for burn survivors. It's for anyone. It's important who's had a big life change, to have support when getting back out there. So, yeah, of course, our key components of partnership, huge teamwork. I think we've explained it in a number of different ways, how imperative each member of this team was. Really, It would not have been as beneficial or intentional of a program without all of those hospital team members working together to make this happen, and all the firefighter team members working together to make this happen, and then everything in between. And then the only kind of bigger logistical legal thing is that if you were ever to create a program like this with a partnership of the community or somebody outside of the hospital, you would want to do a partnership agreement in writing that kind of definitely outlays the ground rules very clearly. We have budgeting or report analysis so that we can give that back to the BFFBF so that they know we're using their money wisely. What does donor relations do? Who owns the logo? How often do we need to meet? What do you want to be reflected in the annual review? What if we need more money? So all of those things are important to be very clear about with the agreement. Did you want to say anything about that, Steve?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. Yeah, I think most of the stuff there's the ground rules in writing is really because now even right now, but 20, 30 years from now, as it's still going and it's still the best out there, there's going to be changes. So everyone can resort if, what are those rules? Maybe someone forgot, because I'm not going to be around for maybe 20 years from now. I maybe won't be around.
Exactly. Excellent. So, some firefighter perspectives. Let's hear them, Steve.
Oh, that's a good group. So actually, each first of all, it's real difficult to get firefighters to write out a survey and try to get they don't want to be touchy feely. I know there might be some psychology people listening to this, but that's my definition: touchy feely. And that, so it's real difficult to get them to participate and or open up about their feelings. Maybe that's just the profession. Maybe they have a type A personality, or predominantly type A personality within the fire service. But here's some of them. Each time I volunteered, it has been a rewarding experience seeing how happy the kids are, and to have us make it work every second. And of course, somebody else writes, it has shown the importance of our job. It was someone else, very humbling, eye-opening to see how people are affected by the work we do and the things we try to prevent. And then it's thought, they think they're giving back. I think it's a great, they think it's a great organization, and it makes them feel great that they can give back to the survivors, help out, continue their job as firefighters, helping out. Great attitudes with kids that carries with them. Their spirits are strong and they have a drive to move forward. Watching the kids every time away from the hospital, just getting them out of that setting. Get them out into the community where even if they were at a home, maybe they weren't doing these things because they were not able to, but they can do it now with the confidence of a firefighter. The direct impact we had on kids' days and lives, giving them something to look forward to and truly enjoy. So all of these are great, and you can read them. But I mean, I think it also has a great effect on the firefighters themselves. I mean, that was a collateral benefit that we saw develop out of this program, is that it's actually really helping the firefighters. Because sometimes they may see things, especially if they're younger firefighters, that, wow, it's pretty bad, and then, but they're actually able to do something good, do something positive for somebody. And so it's been really, it's been extremely beneficial for the firefighters. It certainly has been for me. And favorite experience, they'll talk about it, but I've had one-on-one conversations with firefighters too. Only a couple that have ever opened up, and we've had more than I don't know how many volunteer firefighters, well more than 50. I know that. But the positive attitudes, watching the kids enjoy their time and all that. And yeah, that's all I got on this. You got anything else?
Just the video. So we thought that
Just the video.
you've heard a lot of us talking. You've heard plenty of our voices. We wanted to show you a video that was made for Team Brave. I think it was within the first year. And we kind of used it as a tool to raise awareness, and it has been the Team Brave video for quite some time now. Things have progressed since then, so maybe we're doing a new video, but anyway, I give you Team Brave.
Sometimes feel a little lonely, and I sometimes feel like I'm the only one fighting dark to find the light, and I am afraid to fall back down. I know that you look right through me, and I worry that you see me for the skin I wear. 1 in 50 million truths, and I will not fall back down. What's it mean to be brave? And being who you are, what's it mean to be brave? And reaching for the stars. You don't know me, I don't know you, but if you ask, I'll tell the truth. What's it mean to be brave? And being who you are. I know I might look different to you, but I hope that you won't judge me until you can see inside my hopes, my thoughts, my dreams, the real me. 'Cause this is who I am. What's it mean to be brave? And being who you are, what's it mean to be brave? And reaching for the stars. You don't know me, I don't know you, but if you ask, I'll tell the truth. What's it mean to be brave? And being who you are. I see you watching me with pity written in your frown. So many thoughts in my head. Sometimes I feel like I might drown. I'm working oh so hard to try to convince myself that I am strong, and I'm moving on, and I'm in control of who I am. What's it mean to be brave? And being who you are, what's it mean to be brave? And reaching for the stars. You don't know me, I don't know you, but if you ask, I'll tell the truth. What's it mean to be brave? Being who you are, what's it mean to be brave? And reaching for the stars. You don't know me, I don't know you, but if you ask, I'll
And there you have it. That's Team Brave. And that's all we have for you today. Thank you all for your attention, and let us know if you have any questions.
Wow. I think I needed that tonight, with all that's going on in the world. This was fantastic. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
What an extraordinary interprofessional collaboration, recreational therapy and firefighters. And, just a lot of bravery. And we are so grateful to you tonight, and appreciative. And I've been seeing some questions that have been popping up in the chat, and I am going to scroll back and see if I can track them down so that interested folks can find out, answers to some of their questions. So let's see here. Suzanne Sellers asks, you said there were teen discussion groups and support provided by psychology in preparation of the outings. Was there any kind of teen debrief after the outings besides questionnaires?
On a day-to-day basis, we wouldn't have, I guess, after each of the settings or each of the outings, we wouldn't have kind of official debriefs. A lot of debriefing we would do as a large group in the van. So usually it took, anywhere between 20 and 30 minutes to get home. So we would all use the opportunity with the entire group to debrief while we're doing that. So unfortunately, the psychologist wouldn't have been there at the time, and it would have been led by myself or another child life specialist. But it was an opportunity for them to talk about things that they felt like they achieved or difficulties they had, and the opportunity to share, oh yeah, I was actually thinking that too, or no, I saw you do that. You killed it. That was amazing. And so it was a great chance for that peer interaction as well.
Got it. So more natural, more casual.
Mm-hmm. We never knew when we were getting back either. So sometimes you never know the traffic, like I said. So it would be hard to have the psychologist waiting for us when we got back. But yeah, informal.
Natural debrief.
Mm-hmm.
So Chaz says, I commend you both and the BFF firefighters for doing this. Here's the question. Do you know how the $748 B loss was calculated for mental and physical costs for adverse childhood experiences, or do you have a citation handy?
Yeah, great question. I don't know how that was calculated, to be honest. I do have a site on the resources that I will share with Julie and Wendy. It's a study by the CDC and Kaiser Permanente. So it's on the CDC website. If you just go to CDC website and look up adverse childhood experiences, you'll find it, but it is also linked on the resources page that I'll send.
Okay, thanks. And then Jenna, another one of our grads, asked, how did the firefighter group get from the public information representative at the hospital to the right contact?
Don't know.
That was just, well, going against the hospital rules. How about that? It was just saying, no, you don't, it wasn't the right person. So we just kept seeking out that.
As you can see, Steve just does things. And from my perspective, I just remember after what, because they did the Christmas in July. So they would do Christmas time and Christmas in July. It's very cool. They would bring their ladders. They would have Santa come up on the ladder and wave at the kids in the window. It's amazing. So we had worked with him before on that, and he would always be asking, hey, Chris, what do you need? What do you need? And I was thinking small things like, do you need a new foosball table or something? Not that that's that small, but he was offering, and I was like thinking small scale like that. And I think I very casually mentioned this program to him one day. He's like, what? Tell me more. And then we got into a meeting, and it kind of very organically and in a way that probably was not the proper channels worked out. So not a great response there.
Love it. Being a little subversive really fits with this crowd. So I think that sounds great. That's awesome work.
Gotta do what you gotta do.
Okay, so here's another question. During the pandemic, were you able to still do activities with the kids? And did you have to come up with some creative alternatives during this time?
Yeah, so pandemic, I was, Coach Chris had just left, Coach Rebecca took over as the coach. During the pandemic, we had to abide by the rules following that went along to public health with it. So we did have to halt for a while. And that was I guess, I don't like the term obstacles, but maybe that's the only thing I'd ever add. It was an obstacle, was the pandemic, and it was because of dealing with so many of the firefighters coming up. What is that? Oh, we can do this. We'll all wear masks. We'll do. Come on! And they're yelling at me, and I'm like, "Whoa, stop! I have nothing to do with But that was it. Yeah, so we did have to pause it for a little bit, and it was just wow. It was just a bad thing. And then when it came back, we were like, "Whoa, I can't have 40 firefighters here. I can't have it. Sorry." So we went down a list and started doing it. So yeah, that was the only issue during the pandemic.
Sounds great. And we've got someone on the in our meeting also who is a first responder and a social worker, and is just saying, wow, the work you do is so impactful, and really appreciates hearing about the debriefing. And let's see here. I'm looking for new questions. And I'm scrolling.
Thank you for all these kind comments, guys. This is very sweet.
It's a very affirming group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Steve, you're getting some shout outs here. I don't know if you can see these. For the record, Steve is the best. Between the accent and the heart, Steve for president.
Yeah,
we need more Steves.
They're responding quite a bit to that Boston accent of yours.
I love it.
Oh, well, I don't have an accent.
Oh.
Everyone, there's only 25 letters in the alphabet. I don't know what you guys.
Anybody else want to ask a question of our presenters about their really dynamic and interesting collaboration, teamwork, anything that's come up that you want to just,
So one of the questions I have is, so I work with burn victims too. I work, some of the patients I see are traumatic, are in our, we have a trauma burn unit. And I know the reaction you were talking about, that when people first time see a burn victim. Now I work only with adults. I don't work with children. But what I'm wondering is, we don't get the opportunity, the firefighters don't get the opportunity to come in and see who they rescued. There's all sorts of HIPAA violations. So this gives a chance for the firefighters to see kind of the end result of what they're doing from their end. So I guess my question is, what's kind of like, Stephen, was a therapeutic benefit to that piece of it, if you can think of one?
Yeah, I think so we deal with our Burn Foundation does the adults too. So there's in Boston, there's 2 adult burn centers, and then there's another one just for rehab. So in total, our Burn Foundation deals with 4 burn units, to include Shriners. So the Shriners. So to answer your direct question, is it beneficial for those firefighters? Absolutely, 100%. I'm telling you right now, it can't be. There's too many times that some of them will just, okay, we'll talk about just last week. I myself are dealing with 2, one guy trapped under his leg, amputated under a car that flipped over, things like that. And so, which we didn't know. Now, we did not know this, especially with Team Brave volunteers are coming over to the adult burn centers or the child, but we did not know at the time, but later we found out that, wow, this is really beneficial for the fight. They can see a tragedy, and that's going to stay with them. And some things, it's going to stay with us anyways. We know that. But it really helps. There is some healing process there, and I can't explain it. I'm not a psychologist, you know, I'm not a social worker. I can't, but there is an extremely, and you know, we've gotten some surveys, and then some of the research that we're getting and we're still collecting is showing that. Kind of knew it, but we didn't know everything we knew. If that kind of makes sense. I know a lot of stuff I say doesn't make sense, but does that answer your question? Awesome. Giddy up.
Giddy up. Okay, and a couple more questions. So one of our attendees wants to know, how do you handle emergencies and outings? What's the protocol for emergencies?
We're very lucky to have a bunch of EMTs with us. So there were protocols for that. But the first thing would be that the EMT, the firefighter, would help with what they needed to help with, and then we would get the patient back to the hospital immediately. So luckily fairly simple with honestly, they made it so easy. I don't know. They did everything. They did all the hard stuff. So
Great. I feel like you already talked about some of the challenges initially in getting this partnership going, but is there anything else you would say about some of those initial steps, as you refer to them, not barriers, but steps? And if so, what were those things that you needed to work through, those steps that you needed to work through?
Oh, so I like that. Not Barry. I'm assuming that one's for me.
I think so. I'm tailoring my speech to your new phrasing.
Yeah, no, you know what? In all honesty, I think it's just doing it. Just pulling the trigger. Everyone had stop thinking about the liability and the other things that could get in some people's way, and just know the end goal, and know that goal, and say, okay, that's it. And literally, actually, in January 14th, when we had the first speaking, very first meeting for this thing we call Team Brave, which didn't have a name at the time, but community reintegration, and we knew right then. We decided, oh, this is happening. We're doing it. We didn't know about any permit. Do we need permit? Oh, who cares? You know, I'd rather ask for forgiveness than permission on anything I do, and just do it. You know, honestly, Nike had the best slogan around. Just do it. You know, don't let anything get in your way, because it's not in your way. Yeah, and have that attitude. Know that it's going to be done. Actually, when I was talking about the first meeting, January 14, was we knew it was happening. We said, this is going to be a success. It's going to be the best around. In fact, at the time, it was the only one around. And then other people are now copying it and that approach. And to get back to it's already done in California now. They have their own version, Reintegration. That was actually a cell for the firefighter one night. Wow. I flew out and met him, and just basically didn't blast them, just kind of, you know, just said, hey, you guys, this is what we did. You do it too, because it works. And they went out and started it.
Yeah, I think they're Team Hope. Team Hope, yeah. I think. Yeah. And coincidentally, the rec therapist who runs that team was a student of mine and at our hospital beforehand. So it's nice that she's kind of continuing all this out. And then from my perspective, I just got lucky. Steve and the BFFBF were already part of the hospital, and it was kind of just a serendipitous situation where we had a lack of awareness about, you know, he didn't know what I needed. I didn't know what he was offering, but we kind of had a random conversation one day and it worked out. There is not often, I will tell you, I've created several community reintegration programs. Basically, I'm obsessed with it. It's happened in every single setting I've been in, and it has never been this easy. So it doesn't usually fall into place like that. It usually is much harder to find partnerships. It's very hard to find reliable volunteers. And that's why sometimes these programs tend to be more 1-to-1 or 2-to-1, because that's manageable. And so when you do have a big program like this, you do have to have a very committed and very enthusiastic partner, which I just got lucky. I just got so lucky. We got so lucky. So
you have that in each other, I think. So here's I think this is the last question, just because we're going to need to move to the post test, which is sad because I think people could spend all night just kind of checking in with you and asking you some follow-up questions. But a couple of people were interested in this High Five program fundraiser. What is that exactly?
Yeah, that's so specifically with our Burn Foundation, the overwhelming majority, I don't have the exact number here, overwhelming majority of our funds comes directly from the firefighters themselves. High Five, which we are about to put a trademark that term, is $5 a week directly out of their checks right into our account. It enables us not to be burdened, worry about. It's just the benefit is creating a continuous flow of funds that we can rely on. And it's volunteer, obviously, but I can go to walk in, and I've done it plenty of times. I walk into corporations and stuff like that who want to know more about us and maybe help us out, and can say that, well, the majority of our funds right now come from us. We give to ourselves. And then where's the money going? Well, it's not going back to us, meaning me, to the board members. It's because all the board members have to pay to be on our board. So, but that's the High Five. And it came up, that was just how we're going to do it. What's a reasonable number to ask? That just is still that process of figuring out the saturate, incubate, and illuminate. And that's how that came through a problem. So what are we going to call it? How are we going to do it? So it's evolved over time. $5 a week. It's a High Five club, and we know everyone who's in it.
Fantastic. Well, listen, thank you both so much for an amazing presentation and your important and inspirational work. I am going to
very quickly, Julie, is it okay?
Yes.
I see one more question here that might be worth answering very quickly.
Please. Yes.
Okay, so how can school counselors and schools partner better with programs like yours? I don't know if there's a way that you could go directly to a hospital and partner with them. However, I do want to make you aware of a different resources if you have burn survivors who are in your school and things like that. The Phoenix Society for Burn Survivors is a network. It's an international network that supports survivors. I usually help coordinate the youth and family programming for them. Right now we are working or starting to work on a resource that is going to be a school reentry tool. And that is supposed to be very comprehensive and easy to plug and play and make it easier we usually try to do school reentries ourselves. We usually go to the schools to do them, but sometimes it's just not possible anymore. So check out, if you have burn survivors in your life, the Phoenix Society for Burn Survivors, and you'll find a lot of resources there.
Fabulous. All right. So thank you again so much.